So how do we affect that change?
Well, I think again, the text of the monument doesn't have to be, I think our ordinance, the resolution says that approved in substantially this.
Yeah,
So we don't have to worry. So
we don't have to worry, we can make a change.
You can continue to
Change it.
slug this out.
So say nothing.
Now the question is, how do you get consensus on what the wording should be if it's not by way of a motion?
The board.
Of some sort? So what you can do is you can take it off the consent agenda, make a motion to the alternative word, and see if you get the vote. Or if you just want to slug it out afterwards.
I think the only people that know about it, or the only person is you. So the others will probably go along with it. Sure. It's simple.
Unless you just want to have the discussion about that wording after.
Well, I guess I did talk to Ed, and he feels pretty strong. If the whole committee felt strongly, I could let it go. But it sounds like the committee that put it together was split. So
Yeah, they are split.
yeah. So I guess.
But you know, ultimately, the board approves it, so. Leave it alone.
Recording in progress.
Fight the fight later.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. I call to order the October 3rd, 2022 regular Board of Alderman meeting. Would everybody please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka. Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Luckmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Here.
Alderman Shelton.
Here.
7 of 8 members are present.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Do we have any changes? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Thank you. Let's move down to item 4, public hearing. We have one item, and that is public hearing for a new conditional use permit for Honeybee Tea, a 1,200 square foot restaurant located within the Deerberg's Brentwood Point Shopping Center at the tenant space addressed as 8558 Eager Road. The property is zoned PD Plan Development Overlay District, where under section 400.1380 subsection C8, restaurants are listed as a conditional use that requires review at the Planning and Zoning Commission and approval at the Board of Aldermen. So with that, I will gavel open the public hearing for that matter.
Good evening, Whitney Kelly on behalf of the City of Brentwood.
Is that on? Okay, you might have to move it closer. There you go.
Yeah. Good evening, Whitney Kelly on behalf of the City of Brentwood. This was presented at the prior September 14th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. They are taking up an existing tenant space within the Deerberg Shopping Center with no changes to the exterior of the building or the site and no outdoor seating. And there was found that there's sufficient parking within the existing parking lot, and therefore the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by an 8-0 vote. And the applicant is here to provide answer any questions or provide a report on their business operations.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions? Anybody in the public care to address this matter? Now is the time to do so. If not,
I'm Al Levine. I'm
Okay.
the architect. I will answer any technical questions about the project. The tenant is here, and he can talk to you about his business. And here's a microphone.
Hi there. My name's Hai Tang, and I'm the owner of the Honeybee Tea, and we currently have a location in the city of Manchester, and we've been open probably seven plus months now, and it's doing really well. And we have customers all the way from 4 or 5 years old all the way to 80-something years old in all walks of life and all types of professions. So it's a it's a shop that I'm really proud of, and we're expanding, and appreciate the opportunity to come to Brentwood, and we're also on our way to St. Charles. So it's a boba tea shop. It's a growing phenomenon in the U.S. and all over the world, and basically we serve all types of teas with toppings. So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Whitney, the report from Planning and Zoning, what was their findings on the conditional use?
They recommended approval by 8-0.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, then we will take you up later in tonight's meeting.
Great. Can I make one request?
Sure.
That I know that if there's no objection, if you could do the second reading today as well, that would be very helpful to get under construction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll take that up when your matter comes up on the agenda. Thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing and open it up to citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board, now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. All we ask is that you come down to the podium and state your name and address. Do we have anybody online by chance, Kelly?
Excuse me, there's nobody online with their hand raised.
Okay, then we'll move on to mayor and alderman reports. First up is mine. I have one matter. I had asked this board when we took up whatever resolution it was to appoint Green Street, the first meeting in August. I'd asked this board, maybe the second meeting in August, the only meeting in August, I had asked this board to postpone voting on it that night and to give the public some time to reach out to their alderman and to get some information. And we encouraged them to attend the ward meetings, again, to talk to the alderman, to get some more information and share with the alderman what it is that they would like to see down in that redevelopment area. It also allowed us an opportunity for Green Street to put on an open house. I have been consistent from the very beginning that I encourage people to reach out to the alderman, to talk to you, because you are the ones that are ultimately going to be voting on any redevelopment agreement if we get one. So with that being the case, my thought is I think it would be a good idea to appoint one of you acts simply as like a liaison to the negotiations. And the role that I would anticipate is that this person would be the eyes and ears of the board during these negotiation meetings. This person would be the source to answer questions that might arise as to the vision of the board, the goals of the board, as opposed to asking me or staff. I think it makes more sense for it to be an alderman that answers or tries to answer those questions. You won't necessarily be an advocate during the meetings, but simply to be there in case there are questions, but also to be able to report back to the board as to the status of this. And I have my thought, who I'd like to appoint, and I've talked to this person already, would be Alderman Weggie. And so with that, I'm asking for a motion to appoint Alderman Weggie as the liaison to the negotiations team.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on that? Okay, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. And now we moves down to Alderwoman Tice.
No report.
Alderwoman Sims.
The Ways and Means regular monthly meeting for October is this Thursday, October 6th at 5:30. We're in the throes of budget season, so come on out. It's a good time. Encourage your attendance and input.
Alderman Weggie.
Join us for a very special Public Works meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. where we'll be talking about Lee Wind Trail repairs and what we can do about Black Creek. We call a special meeting just because of the urgency on that, so we can get it to the board at the next meeting, our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmuller.
I'd just like to highlight, excuse me, Resolution 1404 in the consent agenda. We finally have an agreement from the property owner over there in the promenade to install the memorial for the Evans Howard neighborhood. It's a predominantly black neighborhood that the promenade now sits on, and that we pretty much reap quite a bit in sales tax from, that allows us to do a lot for our citizens. So I hope the board will support Resolution 1404. And also, if you'd like to support it financially, you can go to a GoFundMe page, which is Evans Howard Memorial, and make a donation there to help erect a new memorial. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Gould.
No report.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
No report.
And Alderman Sheldon.
No report.
Brings us down to City Administrator Report, under which we have 2 items. The first is Brentwood Bound Update. Mr. Schluter.
Good evening. Craig Schluter with Navigate Building Solutions. I'll be providing the Brentwood Bound update. So first area of expenses is soft costs. Total spend since the last Board of Alderman meeting is $22,546.08, and that was spent on legal and auditing fees. In the categories of funding, the city received a check from their partner Gravers Greenway, so the funds received were updated. The Bowser House rent categories of funding were updated, and also the city received an update on the 2019 COP's investment income that have been received to date, and those were updated as well. And that's my update.
Okay, do we have any questions for Craig? If not, thank you, Craig. Next item is the proposed budget of the South Hanley Road CID. Who's handling that, Bola?
I am. Good evening. In board docs is the annual budget for fiscal year 2023, starting January 1 through December 31st for the South Hanley Road CID, pursuant to Section 67.141 of the CID Act. They are required to present this to the board, and it is there in case you have any questions tonight. Otherwise, it will go into effect.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Not? Okay, thank you. Move down to consent agenda, under which we have 6 items. Are there any questions about any of these items or any requests to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda? Yes, Alderman Gould.
I just have one question regarding the Jacobs Engineering costs.
Which is that?
Letter D, sorry, consent agenda letter
Okay.
D. Is it my understanding that when we have any flood assistance money that comes in, will that cover the cost that we had to, because this is all flood related overages that needed to be handled with that?
Sure. So the city's been meeting with FEMA on a weekly basis, and the first reimbursement request will be going in within the next week, and that includes this Jacobs Engineering change order requests.
Okay.
So yeah, this is an additional cost to the city due to the flood, and this is being submitted to FEMA as part of that FEMA request.
So we're going to approve this to be paid to get them.
Correct.
Get it paid off, but then with the expectation that we might get some reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Not. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Waggy,
Yes.
Alderman Gould,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. That brings us to old business, of which we have none. So we'll drop down to item 10, new business. First up is bill number 6418. Can we get a first reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6418, first reading, an ordinance approving utility easements with Union Electric Company doing business as Ameren, Missouri, for electric facilities for the Brentwood Bound Improvements Project.
Dan?
Seems like I do these every month. These are for improvements that are closer to Brentwood material, or what used to be Brentwood material. So east side of Brentwood Boulevard, near the railroad tracks, Ameren needs easements to do their facility relocations in that vicinity near the new Brentwood Park. So they've asked for us to prepare this to get an ordinance and actually a bill for a first and second reading to perfect into ordinance form.
Do you have any questions for Dan? And as Dan mentioned, we would like to have a second read on this tonight, so if someone can make a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that motion for second read? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6418 by title only, please?
Bill number 6418, second reading and consideration for adoption and ordinance approving utility easements with Union Electric Company doing business as Ameren, Missouri, for electric facilities for the Brentwood Bound Improvements Project.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect 6418 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Got a motion and a second to perfect. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6418 will become ordinance number 5049.
Thank you. Brings us down to item 10B, Bill number 6419. Can we get a first read of Bill 6419 by title only, please?
Bill number 6419, first reading, an ordinance approving an amendment to the lease and services agreement between the city of Brentwood, Missouri, and the Brentwood Public Library.
Thank you. Gina, are you presenting on this? Yes. All right.
So when we started the lease agreement, we...
If you could just introduce yourself. I know,
I'm
we
so
know
sorry.
who you are, but
Jenna Gibbons, Brentwood Public Library.
thank you, Jenna.
So when we entered into the agreement with the city for the lease and services, we decided that the utilities would be paid monthly and determined monthly, but that has not... it's not been a good process for the finance department. So we are asking that we take a year's worth of utility bills and with a formula that takes into account our square footage, since we don't have separate meters for the library, that we then just average that over the year and pay it the following year. So Robin, the finance director, would take the 2021 bills, figure out what our average usage would be for, and then we would pay that for our 2022. So,
Okay.
is that clear?
I understand exactly what you're asking,
Okay.
what you wanting to do. Does anybody have any questions for Jenna on that? Okay, and they would like to have a second read on this tonight as well, if we can get a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6419 by title only, please?
Bill number 6419, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance approving an amendment to the lease and services agreement between the city of Brentwood, Missouri, and the Brentwood Public Library.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect 6419 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
7-0. Bill 6419 will become ordinance number 5050.
Great, thanks. Thank you,
Thank
Jenna.
you. Thank you so much for your time.
Brings us down to Bill number 6421. Can we get a 6420. Can we get a first read of 6420 by title only, please?
Bill number 6420, first reading, an ordinance granting site development plan approval for parking lot improvements at 950 Hanley Industrial Court.
Thank you.
Good evening, Whitney Kelly on behalf of the city of Brentwood. Sorry. This was presented also at the September 14th Planning and Zoning Commission. The applicants are looking to provide a new access drive at 950 Hanley Industrial Court behind the building, and along with 14 new parking spaces. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by a vote to 8 to nothing. They did include in condition 5 that the dumpster at 1002 Hanley Industrial Court did not provide the sufficient fire access around the building. So a condition of the approval was that the 6 parking spaces on that site needed to be restriped or the dumpster relocated to provide sufficient width. Since the Planning and Zoning Commission, the fire chief and I, along with several of his other staff, did meet with the applicant on site. And what in the memo you have highlighted the 6 spaces that would be restriped to parallel parking to provide the sufficient width. So therefore, we think that meets with the condition for your approval.
Okay. Have any questions? Okay. And
Your
we
Honor.
don't, oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to make a motion for a second reading of this tonight as well.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second for a second read. Any discussion?
Yeah, just the rationale for that is, I mean, this has been reviewed by P&Z. It was unanimously adopted with the additional safety thing, which has been addressed. This has been reviewed 3 times. So I think, I know the company wants to get moving on this quickly, and with winter coming, another 2 weeks could be the difference in them getting it done before winter or not. So that's the rationale.
Alderman Gould, did you have your hand raised? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so all in favor of the motion for second read, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6420 by title only, please?
Bill number 6420, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance granting site development plan approval for the parking lot improvements at 950 Hanley Industrial Court.
Thank you.
Motion to perfect Bill number 6420 in the ordinance form.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 7 to 0, Bill 6420 will become ordinance 5051.
Thank you. Brings us down to item D, Bill number 6421. Can we get a first read of Bill 6421 by title only, please?
Bill number 6421, first reading, an ordinance approving a site development plan and granting a conditional use permit for 1,200 square foot restaurant Honeybee Tea at 8558 Eager Road within the Brentwood Point Shopping Center.
Thank you.
Good evening. This was the public hearing that was earlier this evening. And so I won't repeat myself, but if you have any questions, we are here to answer them.
Yeah. Are there any questions for Whitney or the applicant on this? And you did hear that there was a request by the architect for, they would like to have a second read on this tonight. So if the board is so inclined, I would need a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion for a second read and a second for that motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill 6421 by title only, please?
Bill number 6421, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance approving a site development plan and granting a conditional use permit for a 1,200 square foot restaurant Honeybee Tea at 8558 Eager Road within the Brentwood Point Shopping Center.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect 6421 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 7 to 0, Bill 6421 will become ordinance number 5052.
Great. Welcome. This brings us down to item DE, 6422. Can we get a first reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6422, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain real estate sale contract with Mount Calvary Evangelical Lutheran Church of the Unaltered Augsburg Confession of Brentwood, Missouri, for the purchase of a portion of certain property at 9321 Litzinger Road in the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. Eric?
Yeah, so it was a little deja vu here. We talked to, we passed this ordinance for a contract with Mount Calvary, and discussion with their attorney. The Mount Calvary would like to leave the playground equipment and the shed on the current property. The contract that we agreed said it had to be removed as soon as the contract was signed. They're hoping they could keep it at least through the end of this school year. I think that's a perfectly acceptable request. So then, since they hadn't signed it, there's no contract. So this is the contract with the revised language, allowing the shed and the playground to stay until the end of the school year.
Okay. Do you have something? No? Looked like you did. I didn't want to. All right. Do we have any questions for Eric on that? No? Okay. We would like to have a second read on this as well. So can we get a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill number 6422 by title only, please?
Bill number 6422, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance of the City of Brentwood, Missouri, approving a certain real estate sale contract with Mount Calvary Evangelical Lutheran Church of the Unaltered Augsburg Confession of Brentwood, Missouri, for the purchase of a portion of certain property at 9321 Litzinger Road in the City of Brentwood, Missouri, authorizing certain other actions in connection therewith, providing for the effective date of this ordinance, and containing a severability clause.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6422 into ordinance form.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Alderman
One
Gould.
question. So, Eric, if they do sign the contract and we move forward with this, are we liable for the playground and anything that might happen on there, or is that covered and all that?
No, because it's still considered their property
Okay.
until the time for which they move it, which would be the end of the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 7 to 0, Bill 6422 will become ordinance number 5053.
Thank you. This brings us down to item 10F. Bill number 6423. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6423, first reading, an ordinance establishing a pay classification system for all full-time City of Brentwood employee positions and establishing an accompanying pay classification system for fiscal year 2023 and related matters which are contingent upon the annual budget appropriation and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
Thank you. Jason, are you presenting on this?
Sort of.
Okay.
We have Linda Higbee on the horn. She's got a PowerPoint presentation to go through.
Oh, okay.
The presentation that she's going to go through, we've already presented once to the Ways and Means Committee. There were a couple of questions that the Ways and Means Committee had raised, so it went to Public Safety because the Public Safety employees were looking to add a lieutenant's position for the police department and an engineer position for the fire department. They then in turn pushed it back to Ways and Means, so here we are. The reason that we're doing this at this point, just to refresh, the one that we just finished last year was actually a little bit late in happening, so technically it was retroed back to January 1 of 2021. We do these every 2 years. This year would be for implementation as of January 1 of 2023. This go-round, we did examine all of the positions within the pay classifications for all employees, as well as, again, adding in these two potential positions. There were no benefits looked at this time because they were done the last go-round. So I don't want to kind of steal any thunder from Linda. Again, she's on the horn. She can kind of go through her presentation, and if you have any questions, either she or I can answer them. I did include implementation costs broken down by department and then as an overall implementation cost.
Thank you. Okay, Linda, are you there?
She's on, she's just muted.
Just so you know, Kelly, our TV's not on, so we can't see anything on this side.
Yeah, this is
this side here.
Side on our side.
We have Brentwood City of Warmth, and we have nothing over here.
Okay, I think I'm officially unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Linda, but we can't see your presentation yet, so hang on a second. while our,
Okay. I think Jason's going to be my presenter tonight in terms of keeping the slides running, dear, and we have somewhere else tonight. So
okay, now we
I'm going to
got
let
you.
him do that.
Now
So
it's,
if you have
it's
me,
working.
yeah, we will just, I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but it's really hard for me to see people. So if you have questions, you may want to interrupt me because it's hard for me to see on my screen if you're just raising a hand. So somebody let me know and away we'll go. Okay, so we had some objectives this year that were similar, but yet a little different, and our process was a little different this year, and that's what we want to talk about tonight. Obviously, what we were looking at was a market study for your positions to make sure that you remain competitive. We wanted to look at all job descriptions this year, and then, of course, we're doing the presentation and the report, so you get some recommendations from us as well. As all of you know, with things going on with COVID and some of the recruiting difficulties, it was kind of an interesting study this year. So I think you'll find there are some different points from prior years as we go through this. Obviously, the deliverables from our perspective were a competitive review of your compensation against your comparator group, recommended changes to all your pay structures, and then, of course, the presentation tonight, as well as to your Ways and Means group. So one of the things that we want to talk about is the process review, because that's where we were different from our prior years. The first thing we've done was a confirmation of comparators. We do that every single year just to make sure that those are still the same folks you want to compare to. Our survey process was a little different this year in that what we did from a data collection standpoint is we went to all of your comparators and said, you don't have to complete the survey. Send me your classification structure so that we have all of your jobs and all of your job descriptions. And what that allowed us to do was to really look at a real in-depth match on levels within a job and that kind of thing. So again, a much more, from our perspective, a much more robust process, one in which we have a great deal of confidence in the matching, because that was all done in-house as we were comparing your job descriptions against your comparator group. So we think that's going to be key in terms of some of the things you're going to be seeing this evening from that process review. It was more work on our behalf, certainly, but I think in terms of the quality of information coming back, we're very confident in that information. Your comparator group stayed the same. We only had one person that simply couldn't participate this year. They had a lot going on internally and simply just couldn't put things together enough to really be able to participate. So just so you know that I don't think that really impacted your data much. We've been in touch since trying to look at it. They went through a study and they're still in the process of trying to get things approved. So that's kind of where they were. Again, that's that one comparator that was not able to participate. We didn't change any philosophy pieces. And I know in prior years, this has been something we kind of struggled with as an organization for how you were going to do things. Where you settled in prior years was 95th percentile with one standard deviation for your uniform group, and for your non-uniform, average within one standard deviation for the 75th. So again, no debate, no discussion on this particular piece this year. It was already decided in prior years and followed through in this year. The comparators, again, as I mentioned, sent both their pay grids, all of their classifications, and all the matching was done in-house here at Higbee. And again, that for us gave us a great deal of confidence in terms of the matching and the data that we had. We met with your department heads because we really wanted to hear what their concerns were for 2023. Uniform had some additional classifications if they wanted some potential classifications, which I believe have now been sort of approved ahead of this in terms of adding staff. The non-uniform, what we heard consistently across the board from your department heads is that your hire rates were simply too low for current market conditions. And historically, because of your high seniority rates and the people who stayed with you for a long time, we had typically built your ranges from the market maximums backward to make sure that we had the maximums sufficient to keep pace with market for those long tenured employees. So keep that in mind as we show you what we discovered this year when we looked at that. So when we looked at your survey this year, fire, again, we're just briefly through these because I think this has already been handled in-house as well. The Firefighter Emt Classification, which has always been sort of a sticky piece because not a lot of, most folks don't have that classification for a number of reasons. Nobody's hiring into the classification, but you have a few folks who are still sitting in that classification who haven't received raises or increases in several years. What we did when we looked at that information is we simply took your existing ranges up 2.7% and rounded it up to 3, just looking at the typical range structure changes that we were seeing, but not tied to that specific classification. So again, it was handled as kind of a one-off because of what was going on there. You had a request, and I believe it's been approved, to add an engineer classification to the structure. Less than 3 of your comparators have that classification. The ones who do actually pay an annual differential rather than having them in a separate classification. And for those that do, that's $2,500. The stipend was added or recommended for Brentwood dependent upon a promotional process that also included getting a CDL. So again, there were some measures, if you will, performance pieces that had to occur before that would happen. But those were, I believe, approved before now in terms of going through the specific committees that are responsible for that. Jason, I can't see people, so if somebody's got a hand in the air, we need to stop, let me know.
Linda, this is
Yes,
David.
ma'am.
We'll take care of that. I'll let you know. You
That's
just keep,
awesome. Thank you.
keep going.
Just keep rolling. I'm
Yeah.
there. Okay. Uniform decisions that were required, and again, I think a lot of these have already happened. So this is sort of a in review. You added a police lieutenant classification, the engineer stipend. There was a generic, I call it a generic because it couldn't be tied specifically to a position for that firefighter EMT. We also took that same methodology and applied it to the corporal that experiences exactly those same kinds of issues where not many people have the classification. Therefore, there just aren't enough matches to get a sense of moving a range. Your costing was done internally by Jason this year. So we did not run our typical models for you. He did all of that internally. And then we also did, obviously, we updated your pay grid and with our recommendations as well. Okay, for non-uniform, which is where your significant changes were this year, I think it's really key to look at some things. Same philosophy, so nothing changed about this group this year except how the market moved with trying to hire into some of the classifications that historically have not had any difficulty in recruiting. That simply hasn't been the case over the past year, 18 months almost. We evaluated the ranges based upon both the minimum and the maximum of those comparator ranges. And the reason that's critical is that your minimums were significantly under where some of your comparators had already adjusted their minimums in order to be able to pull people in the door. The ranges, we adjusted from the minimum of the range to reflect current market movement, just to get in new candidates through the door for you. We again adjusted those. For those of you who run your own businesses, you know that this is sort of a condition of market, regardless of, it's not just something that's going on in cities. It's something that's occurring across the board in businesses right now. Again, cost of implementation, Jason's going to do for you as well. And again, we put all of these positions in a pay grid. For many of them, we were able to just adjust your ranges based on the minimums and you were ready to go. But as frequently happens, some of those positions are simply moving faster than even the market would. So we adjusted your ranges, and this is a big range adjustment compared to what we normally would have to do, the 5.7% for this group for this year. And in addition to that, you had 5 classifications that were moving even faster than that in the local market. And some of you I know are already familiar with these, but certainly your sanitation workers, your maintenance workers, mechanics, inspectors. And sorry, Jason, but the HR manager role is also one of those that's moving out of higher and faster than that market range step. Step to step, no change in percentages. So again, once you're in the system, those percentages are tracking right along with the increases that people are getting once they're on board. The key issue is getting your minimums built up to your comparator levels this year. And again, that market movement we have not seen in several years. Probably the last time you saw something similar to this were for the sergeants in the police department several years ago, where it was just out of the blue. Everybody was having to raise that sergeant level just to get somebody into that role. Okay, and then for surveys, some historically undercompensated individuals you have to address. And that's a part of what, as Jason went through his methodology, you're going to see some of that as well. So in some cases, because historically you simply haven't valued that position, but now you're having trouble getting somebody through the door, there have to be some internal adjustments just based on compression to get people where they belong. And that's kind of where we were with that piece. And then obviously next steps for us is kind of like where you are tonight. So obviously you have to approve or reject your classifications. It's my understanding these are sort of, you've checked the box on these already, but the engineer, the police lieutenant kind of thing, approving those updated classification systems, including our one-off methodology for that firefighter EMT as well as the corporal. And then on the non-uniform, again, we built ranges from the higher rates up, stayed within the 12 steps. Movement was the same as the market. And then again, you've got those 5 classifications, some of whom have more than one incumbent, where we think you have to not only adjust the range is 5.7%, but those also need a grade adjustment as well, meaning that the ranges are even higher than anticipated. So obviously you then have to approve the structures for both. So that's kind of the highlights and overview for this year. Questions? Boy, that was really fast for me.
Yeah, Linda, we've got some here. Alderwoman Tice.
So, I mean, I asked this of Jason at the Ways and Means meeting, and I think it's still Jason because I don't think Linda did this, but there are a number of jobs that when you look at them, they actually went down a step. And so I spent a lot more, after the answer I got at Ways and Means, I've spent more time looking through it. I noticed a lot of the people who that happened to have been working for less than a year. So they will get a raise, but they were at, step 9 and they went to step 8 in their grade. But there are 3 job categories where there are people who have worked here for a long time, and it's the laborer and the crew leader and the fire captain. And I'm baffled that, like, the laborer is grade 6, am I doing it right? Grade 6, step 12. And then this person will receive a 2.6% increase and be at grade 6, step 11. And so the whole range, I guess I don't understand how these particular job categories have gone down in step.
All right, I'll do my best to explain. What we have always done is we've taken a look at where the folks would be if no plan were implemented. So if they stayed on the current plan, where would they be? Based on that, so as an example that you gave with the laborer, if this plan weren't in place, he would remain at step 12 because he was already capped. So then we look at what the new step brings in. That new step rises up, so he goes to the next appropriate step, which would be step 11. So even though he's been an incumbent, he will still get a rate increase. Had we not implemented this, he would have remained the same. We did exactly the same thing last year when we put in place a rate increase for the police sergeants. They had a significant increase. Some of those that were already at that range simply went to the next appropriate step, which was step 6, even though they had been at step 7 prior. It's the way that we have always implemented this.
Okay, so I guess always is a really loaded word. I mean, I think since Brentwood started, it hasn't been done this way. Like, when did the always start?
When this type of a plan was implemented, which was prior to my arrival. So that would have been in 2016, I think, was when the first comp plan was put in place.
Okay, so Linda, could you comment on this and help me understand?
Could I kind of jump in, because I think this may be more helpful to you. You have your non-uniform on a step plan. As all of you know from prior discussions, that's pretty atypical. So I think you're kind of getting hung up on what the step is, where if your individual was in a range, what you would see is that range got bigger and therefore they were raise eligible where they would not have been before. So you have an individual whose opportunity for increase and indeed whose increase is now higher, but the step number is lower. The step number from our perspective really isn't very key, because what we're trying to do is to make sure that they are paid a market competitive wage, not that they be kept at a particular step number. If they were in a range, all you would be seeing is that this person was now getting more money. And that's really the objective when you're looking at a pay plan to say, is this person raise eligible? And he's going down one step, but he's getting more money for being one step lower.
Yeah, and I guess all three of these categories, these people would be capped. And so I almost feel like they're getting penalized down a step, so they get a little raise next year and then another raise the next year. And and I guess we dealt with so much stuff last year that I didn't get down to this level of minutia because there was a lot more going on last year. But maybe other people don't agree with me, but it just seems, doesn't quite seem right, but I'll let others comment.
How to exactly answer that. I mean, if the board were to direct to go to a higher step, we could definitely do that. Again, I based the calculations on our historical practices, and that was the primary reason for doing it. Is if we make a change now, we would have people that had not seen that type of an increase in the past potentially be upset by the fact that we're now changing gears on that. These individuals, in all three of those categories, had been capped prior to this year, so if this plan were not implemented, they would not be receiving any increase. This gives them the opportunity to advance further than they had prior. I don't know if that's an acceptable answer, but.
Jason, if I could also make a comment, if indeed you were going to do that from a consistency standpoint, you'd have to go back through your entire population and say, okay, everybody that was at step 12 goes back to the new step 12, and your costs would go up exponentially by doing that, because you'd need to be able to apply that across your organization, not just for these three classifications.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? All right. We are not doing a second read on this tonight, so Linda, thank you very much. Thanks,
sure.
Jason.
Okay, thank you.
That'll bring us down to the last item under new business, and that's bill number 6424. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a first read by title only, please?
Yes, sir. Bill number 6424, first reading, an ordinance approving easement agreements with Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District for the Brentwood bound improvements.
Thank you.
A few more easements, but these are for stormwater. So these different addresses here, 2908, 2914, 2916 Brazos, as well as 2924 Mary. This will help MSD put in some sewer pipe. There's a pump station, which is a giant cylinder that collects the stormwater, and the subterranean easements that's for all these piping. So they're asking for the first and second reading, and that will get them the easements they need for the Brentwood bound project.
Okay. You have any questions for Dan? He said we would like to have a second read tonight, if at all possible.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of bill number 6424 by title only, please?
Bill number 6424, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance approving easement agreements with Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District for the Brentwood bound improvements.
Thank you.
Motion to perfect bill number 6424 into ordinance form.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to perfect? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Waggy?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 7-0, Bill 6424 will become ordinance number 5054.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan. That brings us down to item 11, citizen comments. Again, if anybody in the public cares to address the board, now is the time to do so. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. We'll only ask that you come down and give your name and address. Seeing none, we do have a request to go into closed session tonight pursuant to section 610.021, subsection 12 of the revised statutes of Missouri. Can we get a motion to that effect, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims. Yes. Alderman Weggie.
Yep.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a quick break and meet back in the conference room. Thank you.